No singing songs and silly bits on this podcast after this sad excuse for a basketball team just lost to the Washington Wizards. Send this freaking season into the sun. Pull the plug and get it over with already. I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. Get me to the off season. You want a Locked On Kings podcast? Oh, I'll give you a Locked On Kings podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. The Sacramento Kings just lost to the Washington Wizards 116-111 in the midst of a competitive, intense play-in race where the Sacramento Kings are holding on to the 10th seed by a thread, by the grace of God, that the Phoenix Suns are a bigger embarrassment than the Sacramento Kings are at this point, which I didn't even know was possible. That's the only reason why the Kings are holding on to their 10th seed and final play-in spot at this point. So much to play for, even if this season has been absolutely abysmal and feels horrible at this point in time, regardless of if the Kings had won or lost today. Still so much for these players to play for, and they don't show up. They don't care. I saw a sleepwalking group of players that look just as eager for the offseason as you and I are at this point. This is what the Sacramento Kings organization chose. The Kings chose these players. The Kings chose this direction, or really a lack of a direction, over two guys, Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox. Oh yes, I'm talking about both of them. Matt, move on. That's over with. They were bad under Mike. De'Aaron Fox is not that guy. Move on. No. Does this look like a team worth moving on with? Right, I'm thinking back to when the Sacramento Kings were actually good, when they had a good head coach. No disrespect to Doug Christie. He's doing his best as the interim head coach. He's inherited a sinking ship and has done his best to patch the holes over the last 3 months. But in reality, the Kings got rid of the only good head coach they've had in nearly 20 years. They got rid of the only star that they had. Let's break this down. Think about this. I can tell you the moment that this Sacramento Kings season ended. It was late December, just after Christmas, when the Sacramento Kings decided to fire Mike Brown after practice, after talking to the media over the phone while he was on his way to the airport for the to catch a flight with the Kings down to Los Angeles. That's when this season ended, because it set off a powder keg chain reaction that has resulted in this for the Sacramento Kings. Mike Brown, the best coach the Kings have had since Rick Adelman in nearly 20 years. Mike Brown, who coached the Sacramento Kings to a 107-win, 88-loss record, which is a 54% win percentage, rounded up to 55. In 3 months since firing Mike Brown, you want to know how much of an improvement the Sacramento Kings have made? Sure, it involved a 7-game win streak. Sure, it involved beating the Cleveland Cavaliers at home or beating the Celtics in Boston. Woo-hoo! When the Kings fired Mike Brown after a horrible homestand, the Sacramento Kings were 5 games under 500. 3 months later, with so much still to play for, in the middle of a play-in/playoff race, the Sacramento Kings have made a whopping improvement of 1 game. After this loss, the Sacramento Kings are 4 games under 500 instead of 5. Not only that, this team has no star, they have no identity, and they have no direction. So sure, you've made 1 game of an improvement, And you got rid of Mike Brown, who apparently was a terrible head coach because he got off to a bad start this season after 2 fantastic starts. You would think Sacramento Kings fans would remember how horrible the coaching has been here in Sacramento over the last 20 years. But the guy has a bad start to a season where he's 13-18, and now everything is his fault. He gets fired. This chain reaction has happened over the last 3 months to where the Kings are at a point that I told you they would be at. And it's Mike Brown's fault? Oh, but it's De'Aaron Fox's fault too, right? Right? Because the Sacramento Kings chose this group who didn't want to be held accountable by Mike Brown, who would hold himself accountable, who would hold De'Aaron Fox accountable more than anybody else, and Fox was the guy that loved Brown the most and supported Brown. Mike Brown was the only one who practiced what he preached. Mike Brown came into this organization and spoke on accountability on all levels because this organization had none of it. And he changed it in 1 year. Did something that 20 different coaches tried, multiple front offices tried and failed. Mike Brown got it done in 1 year. And as soon as things got rocky, and as soon as players started turning on Brown or quitting on Brown because they didn't want to be held accountable or they didn't want to practice too much when Brown and his coaching staff had to teach them how to do a basic closeout, the organization chose those players over Mike. And look where they are. Not only that, they chose those players over their star in De'Aaron Fox, the only draft pick that the Sacramento Kings have had since 2010. The only draft pick to get a second contract with the Sacramento Kings. The Kings have had a horrible coaching history, a horrible drafting history. Their 2 biggest success stories in the last 2 decades, they got rid of. They chose this over that. Congratulations. Here is where you are. Here is your result. This might sting to hear. De'Aaron Fox was right. De'Aaron Fox was 100% right to say, I need to see more from this organization before I sign the best years of my career to this organization. Now, was De'Aaron Fox's exit as high road as it could have been? No, absolutely not. And of course, Rich Paul and De'Aaron Fox did have an impact on how things played out. But they used the leverage that they had a right to use based off of a position that the organization has put them in. And like De'Aaron Fox himself said on social media, he got the blame for this organization continuing a pattern of inconsistency since before he was here. Instability since before he was here. You chose this over those 2 guys. And here's where you are. This is where you are. A 1-game improvement, 4 games under 500, not showing up against one of the worst teams in the NBA in the midst of a play-in race. A group of guys that does not look interested at all in finishing the season out strong and even making the play-in and giving this organization a chance at the playoffs, which is everything that this organization prioritized this season. They looked for every single shortcut and move that they could possibly make to go all in on a pathetic attempt to make the playoffs. Their own roster doesn't care. You made the wrong choice. There's 6 games remaining, I think. I don't care. Win them all, lose them all. I don't care. I do not care. Make the play-in, don't make the play-in. I do not care. None of it matters. This team is sad. In many ways, pathetic. The organization is in an awful place again. How did we get here? Thought we were past this crap, but nope. Sacramento Kings can't get out of their own way. This is what they invested in. It's the wrong investment. And they didn't play with money that they can just make up later. They played with the direction of this organization that finally got to a spot where they were shedding their skin and their reputation of the dark past, mediocrity, losing, disgrace, low-hanging fruit, all of that, finally moving out of it, finally moving past it, led by a head coach that actually knew what the hell he was talking about and practiced what he preached, and a star who had one of the best. Now, I understand De'Aaron Fox's shortcomings, but when he got to the playoffs, he had one of the best playoff debuts in NBA history. And you chose these guys over them. Enjoy your result. Here's your prize. It's nobody's fault but yours. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your wealth and start building your wealth. Surprise insights are everywhere through Monarch Money, right? Detailed breakdowns of where your money is going, how much money you're spending in specific areas that'll reveal a lot of things that help you get back on track or maybe limit your spending in certain areas. Plus, all-in-one convenience, right? It's just one app. Everything is there. You don't have to worry about multiple apps and different spreadsheets and everything to track your finances and your plans and long-term goals. It's all in one place. Plus, collaboration is easy. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all of the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. You can build your lineup easily, whether it's just focusing on one game or multiple games happening at the same time. You can even intermingle sports. You can have NBA and MLB lineups at the same time. It's fast and simple, easy to put together. You can put those lineups together in 60 seconds. You can do it right before a game starts, so you have all of the information necessary: who's playing, who's out, who's not, temperatures, anything to make the best decisions that you can make. Plus, there are exclusive promos like Taco Tuesday, which basically they're just giving you free money and free entries. PrizePicks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value on Taco Tuesdays. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. If it's not completely obvious to you that changes have to be made, I don't know what more you need to see, right? Finish the process. Complete it. Complete the cycle. You got rid of your head coach. Clearly you shouldn't have, but you did. You got rid of your star. Clearly you shouldn't have, but you did. Finish the process. Complete the reset. Get rid of your front office. Start from scratch. Start from brand new. And I know, like, some people say, well, get rid of ownership too. Let's be realistic here. We know that that's not going to happen. And maybe you're the one that thinks like that nothing's going to change until ownership changes. Well, I hope you're wrong. I think that the 2 seasons ago, when the Kings actually gave Mike Brown the keys and let him handle things his way, it's clear that this organization is capable of working their way out of their bad history. But I know that as soon as that first season ended and the Kings made the playoffs and lost in that first round, it became a whole hell of a lot more difficult for Mike Brown and his coaching staff to do their jobs. Suddenly, there were way more cooks in the kitchen, which has been a consistent problem under this ownership in the, 13 years or whatever that Vivek has owned the Sacramento Kings. That's been a consistent problem. George Karl on this very freaking podcast told me the exact same thing. He and his coaching staff sat down at a table and couldn't get a word in because of Vivek and his front office and his advisors and all these people that hang around that weigh in on basketball decisions who are not qualified to make basketball decisions. I know for a fact Mike Brown faced those same struggles as all these other coaches have and all these other basketball decision makers have. Monty McNair took the podium after Mike Brown was fired, months after Mike Brown was fired, and claimed that it was his decision to fire Mike Brown. Should we believe that? I don't know. Regardless, he is the general manager. He is the basketball decision maker. These last 2 years have been fumble 101. How to completely destroy everything good that you had going for yourself. And whether it's completely Monty McNair's fault or not is irrelevant. It's time to restart. It's time to completely restart. And look, I understand if ownership has no interest in fully blowing up and going back into years of ineptitude and bad basketball to where they can't charge the prices that they've been charging for season tickets and single game tickets over these last few seasons. I know this organization has no interest in going back to that. But every quick fix should be immediately crumpled into a ball and thrown into the trash, because every single quick fix that the Sacramento Kings have tried over the last decade and some change have been disasters. Every single one. You either need to do a full-on rebuild with a general manager that you give the time and the keys to execute it properly, or you better hope you hire a superhero of a GM that doesn't quick fix your way back into things, but can find a way to fix things on a short-term timeline, if that's even possible with this roster at this point. And look, nobody's untouchable at this point. I love Domantas Sabonis, defended Domantas Sabonis on this podcast for 3 freaking years. Love the dude. But Domantas Sabonis cannot be your number one guy. He can't. It's proven. And for some reason, whether this is Sabonis' fault or the Kings' fault or whatever, coaching, whatever it is, the Sacramento Kings just don't play through Domantas Sabonis anymore. It makes no sense. Everything good that the Sacramento Kings were doing through Domantas Sabonis going back to 2 years ago, they barely do it anymore. We can blame DeMar DeRozan's arrival. We can blame Zach LaVine. We can blame Doug Christie. We can blame Mike Brown. We can blame De'Aaron Fox. We can blame whoever we want. The Sacramento Kings do not play through their best facilitator. Or if they do, they only do it a handful of times. It's like they got spooked and scared after the Warriors figured out how to beat it in a playoff series, and they barely were able to do that in a best-of-7 series. Since then, Domantas Sabonis has improved as a shooter, been able to counter one of the ways, pretty much the main way, that the Warriors took away that DHO game from Sacramento. But the Kings still just go away from it. They don't do it anymore. I don't know why. So if Domantas Sabonis wants clarity as to the direction of the Sacramento Kings going forward, I don't blame him, because it's the exact same thing that De'Aaron Fox wanted. But Sabonis, you got your guy in Doug Christie here. And I'm not accusing Sabonis of not playing hard, but he's not getting results. He's certainly not getting his teammates to play hard during this stretch. So Sabonis, you can ask for all the clarity that you wanted. You were one of the people that wanted some of the changes that have happened. You got those changes. And you've improved by 1 game. And now all of a sudden, I don't know if I like the direction that this organization is heading. Homie, you were part of the facilitation of that. I love you, but you were part of the facilitation of that. Everybody knows it. It's not just Domas, of course. Like, I love Keegan Murray. Love Keegan Murray to death. I have not given up on Keegan Murray by any means, but he has also not lived up to the all-star hopes that the Sacramento Kings had when they drafted him with the 4th overall pick. Again, I'm not ready to give up on that completely. I think Keegan Murray has great potential as a two-way guy. I think he can be a much better scorer than he is, and he's shown great improvement every single year, even though that 3-point percentage from his rookie season has dropped off. He's improved significantly, of course, as a rebounder, improved significantly as a defender. He can do more than just shoot from the perimeter offensively at this point. But look, he's not untouchable either. If you're not hanging up the phone for every offer for Keegan Murray, if it makes sense for your direction going forward. I'll say the same thing about Keon Ellis, Malik Monk, Jonas Valanciunas, all these guys that we love here in Sacramento. Good pieces to a good team. But if they don't fit the direction that your new general manager or new coach or whatever direction you decide to go in, whatever identity you decide to build here in Sacramento beginning this summer, if they don't fit that, you move on. As much as they are fan favorites, as much as we love the guys. And then DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, like, look, putting all the blame on them isn't fair. The Sacramento Kings they were good in the last couple of seasons, but the Sacramento Kings have been a bad organization before them. It's not like they came to Sacramento and ruined everything, but they sure as hell haven't helped anything either. They've had great careers. DeMar DeRozan's going to be a Hall of Famer. Zach LaVine's numbers speak for themselves. I don't think DeMar DeRozan is going to be here next season. Zach LaVine probably simply because of his contract, and hopefully we get a different, more engaged version of Zach LaVine next season compared to the one that we've seen over these last couple of weeks, because that's been just sad. But like, I can't tell you I couldn't tell you how much of this core I feel even remotely confident with going forward. I have confidence in their ability. I have no confidence in the cohesiveness. I don't. So if you're bringing a new general manager, with which, God, I beg it happens, you give them the keys and you give them a fresh start. I hope they have full autonomy to make the decisions that they need to make and they want to make, and move on from the players, even the fan favorites, if that's what they need to do. And I'll feel bad about it. I'll feel sick to my stomach if they move on from Domas or Keegan or Keon or any of these guys, Malik. And I'll be critical if the move is good or bad. We'll break it down when it happens. But some change needs to happen at this point. It's completely obvious. You just can't keep doing this nonsense. Something needs to change. Try something new. Because this experiment has been a complete and utter failure. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like watching a basketball game live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes tickets easier than ever. Getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out all of the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. You have easy ticket shopping. You pick the event that you want to go to. You can see the price ranges right then and there. You can do it super, super quick, and there are amazing deals popping up all the time, from discounts to last-minute tickets at unbelievable prices. Game Time gets it done better than anybody else. They have their super deals too, giving you the best bang for your buck and peace of mind with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence on Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. I mean, now I'm asking you, I'm almost begging you at this point, like, help me. What do you want? What are you looking for from not just this team? What are you looking for from this show, from this podcast for the rest of the season? Like what do you want from me? And I'm being genuine. I'm not being like, what do you want from me? Like, how can I make the final week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it is, of this season meaningful to you, informative to you? What are you looking for? How can I deliver that? Like, I'm trying to think of different ways and different conversations and ways that we can look at the future while also being as present as we are required to be, with the Kings still playing games here at the end of this abysmal year. For example, tomorrow on Locked On Kings, I'm going to have Brad Rowland of the Locked On Hawks podcast. He and I are going to get together. We're going to talk about the draft pick, the top 12 protected Kings pick that is owed to Atlanta as part of the Kevin Huerter trade. If it doesn't convey this year, then next year it becomes a top 10 protected pick. And if it doesn't convey next year, then it becomes 2 future second round picks. Talk to Brad, find out, like, do the Hawks really desperately want that pick right now this year for this draft? So are they hoping that the Sacramento Kings win enough to not fall into the top 12? Are they willing, like, how confident would the Hawks be in taking the risk of waiting until next season for it to potentially become, or when it becomes top 10 protected, if the Sacramento Kings would be terrible or not? How big of a disaster would it be in the Hawks' eyes for that draft pick to become 2 future seconds a couple years down the road? Brad and I will talk about that. Plus, we might talk a little bit about Trae Young, if that's a potential target that the Sacramento Kings could go out and get. But that screams of desperate quick fix attempt to me. And like I said last segment, any quick fix that the Sacramento Kings look at this summer should be crumpled up into a ball and thrown into the trash can or thrown into the fire, because quick fixes are like just Band-Aids for this organization. And this organization is gushing blood. There's nothing a Band-Aid can do at this point. So you tell me, what do you want from this podcast? What would you like to hear? What kind of focuses, breakdowns, things like that going forward for the remainder of this season? I'm right in there with you, right? I'm riding the wave with you. As you can tell, I'm frustrated. I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off because even if I had low expectations of this team, even if I had lower expectations than you, even if I didn't think that the play-in or making the playoffs this year would mean anything, because it doesn't, I still expect way the hell more than the Sacramento Kings have shown us over these last couple days. You know how wonderful it was to not pay that much attention to the Kings-Pacers game? And I know the Kings played really well in that game until they couldn't score in the fourth quarter, right? I paid enough attention to that. I loved not doing a podcast after that game. I loved having the break. I was covering A's baseball here in Sacramento. Not that the A's debut in Sacramento was much better. They lost to the Cubs 18-3. In 3 games in Sacramento, the A's gave up 35 runs to the Cubs. So the A's are fitting in great in Sacramento losing sports culture, I suppose. But it was nice to take that break for a little while. But I was not expecting to come back to this. I was expecting to come back and do a podcast after a Kings win over the Wizards. I was going to have tempered expectations, like, okay, good win, needed win. What's next? Right? You got the Charlotte Hornets next. What's next? Now, who cares? Beat the Hornets, lose to the Hornets. I don't care. Beat the Cavs, lose to the Cavs. Who cares? 3 more home games. Who cares? Whatever happens, that's where I'm at. And I'm sorry. I hope that's not terrible to listen to. I hope you're not like, I'm not listening to this guy anymore. This podcast sucks. It's taking a negative turn. I don't enjoy doing this. I don't enjoy the show being like this, but you tell me, based off of what we're seeing from this Sacramento Kings team, everything that I've laid out over this podcast, all the terrible decisions that this organization has made over the last handful of months over the course of this horrendous season, what about this should be spoken with optimism and with positivity based off of what you've seen? Hell, I'm putting more passion and effort and intensity into this podcast than the Sacramento Kings did at any point into this game tonight. Maybe with the exception of Malik Monk talking crap and getting into a little back and forth with the Wizards in the fourth quarter. Didn't matter, though. The Kings got punked and outworked by a 17 freaking win team. I don't know, man. You tell me. And if I know some of you guys like this podcast. I'm glad. I hope you're entertained. This podcast is not good for my mental health, but I guess it's good to get it out there. I want to hear from you, though. This is not a one-way street. This is not just listen to Matt George yell at you for 30 minutes and then go about your day. Like, I want to hear from you. Share with, even if you disagree with me, let's talk about it. Let's talk through it. At Matt George Sack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support as always. I'll be back tomorrow with that episode with the Locked On Hawks podcast talking about that draft pick. Then we get more Kings basketball on Friday. Hooray! We'll see how it goes. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.